What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it looks like it's going to be a fun day today because there is indeed a Nintendo Direct airing later on this afternoon. Surprise, surprise. Well, I'm going to go over some of my thoughts as to what could be there so we can get some of our expectations in line. Also, we are going to be taking a look at Nintendo's most recent financial report, showing some impressive sales for the Switch platform, but also an interesting future for the next fiscal year. And we'll also be talking about the all-digital future, as it looks like it backfired once again. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with a rather hot topic online right now, and that's Hogwarts Legacy. There's been a lot of talk and discussion around this game on social media platforms and streaming platforms like Twitch. A lot of calls for boycotts and all these different things. Well, it appears the game is doing pretty well, especially on Twitch, where you can see this posted up over on Insider Gaming, saying Hogwarts Legacy breaks Twitch record with over 1.3 million viewers. We have a nice little screenshot here above just chatting. That's how you know it's popular, if it's above that category. And I haven't talked much about this game, specifically the discourse, because it's gone completely off the rails, and it isn't even really about the game anymore at all. Like it's no one's even really talking about the game. So the best advice or thoughts I have on this currently is play what you want, because most likely the internet's going to hate you for something someday. So there you go. The game itself, I am playing it on the PS5 currently. I think Sean's playing it on the Xbox, kind of for comparison when we talk about it on the podcast later on this week on Saturday. So I'll give some of my thoughts then when I have some more time in the game. Also, we had just talked about this Xbox Stellar Shift controller that leaked out online a bit early. And well, Xbox announced it yesterday anyway. So we can see this over on news.xbox.com saying Journey to Deep Space with a Stellar Shift Special Edition wireless controller. I mean, it's a nice looking design and all of this, but the interesting thing here, and I'm not too familiar if they've done this before because I have my controllers to the Xbox and I haven't looked into anything outside of maybe the design lab. But if you sync this up to your Xbox, you will get a special edition wallpaper for the background that kind of goes along with the controller. Has that nice purple, blue, galaxy backdrop there. It's an odd thing, I guess, to lock to a controller, but I guess it's a way to just, hey, you know what? This is a nice way to kind of theme everything around the controller. It's just seems like something you would just drop on the Xbox store that people would then download. Maybe you still can, but they're kind of dressing it up here as it being almost an amiibo-like feature where if you have the hardware or accessory, you'll then get the background for it. But it's out now. You can check it out. It's currently going for $69.99. Oh, and I just wanted to point this out. Amazon is running a sale currently that does seem to include some newer titles, and this is a buy one, get one 50% off sale, which works well for those $70 games. But like you can see, Dead Space is up there. Forspoken, if you have not gotten Elden Ring yet, that is also up there, which there have been some rumors around downloadable content for that title. So just kind of throwing that out there. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Nier Automata on the Switch. You can mix and match, obviously, but I recommend grabbing games that are all the same price, whether they're $40 titles, $30 titles, or $70, because what they're going to do is cut the cheapest game in half in terms of pricing. So take advantage of that with two $70 or two $40 games and get a good discount overall. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Direct that will be airing later on this afternoon. Nintendo did indeed tweet it out an hour after Newswave went live, but we've been talking about this Direct happening on the 8th or 9th, depending on your time zone, for a little over a week now. But we can see this posted up on Nintendo's account saying, tune in at 2 p.m. Pacific, February 8th, for a Nintendo Direct live stream featuring roughly 40 minutes of information, mostly focused on Switch games launching in the first half of 2023. I want to say that again, mostly focused on games launching in the first half. So there very well could be a one more thing at the end that is not necessarily first half, but maybe closer to the holiday or even 2024. And looking at some of the talk around this specific event, I think there are a few games we can basically pencil in. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom obviously will be there with a new trailer. We're coming up on 3 months before the game releases. You think Nintendo wants to kickstart this marketing cycle now, especially with something like Fire Emblem Engage being out there currently. And I know they have Kirby and Bayonetta Origins, but Tears of the Kingdom is the big push, the big release for the year with the Switch in mind. Outside of that, we also need to see Advanced Wars get reintroduced with a new release date. Again, I'm kind of thinking April for that one. Pikmin 4, I think that's going to get a release date here. It would only make sense. And I do believe we'll probably see a 2D Mario of some kind just to kind of get that moving along with marketing with the big Super Mario movie coming up soon. Otherwise, though, I have seen some reports and some, we'll say, quote unquote, predictions that we could be seeing ports and remasters take up a good chunk of this direct. And that wouldn't surprise me too much because we've discussed the idea that Nintendo would eventually tap into that GameCube library to remaster titles and bring them up and maybe to work to fill in that gap where they're going to be working on developing games for the next generation system. And we're at about that time where they need to be working on titles for the release of their next platform, which tells me I think it's about time we see that Metroid Prime remaster. And going out here on the limb, I think it's finally time for F-Zero. That's right. F-Zero fans, I don't want to get your hopes up too much, but I believe F-Zero GX with multiplayer online might be in the cards for this direct. I'm going to say might, but I think that'd be a really cool announcement. I also think you could see some third-party Japanese publishers and developers have some games here. Late ports, yes, but think about how we had Nier Automata. That comes out. The port was good. People liked it. So I'm thinking of like Scarlet Nexus, Tales of Arise, maybe Soul Hackers 2, just as some examples. You'll probably also get a trailer for Kirby, just to remind everyone that's coming up, along with Bayonetta Origins. Why not? You have the platform here with millions of people watching. Might as well throw those in there. But I do think having something like Hollow Knight Silksong for its release date to finally get announced, as I mentioned, we're to the point where Silksong has been upgraded from Indie Direct to potentially being a big headlining release, or at least release date and spot in a Direct. Seems like it's about time we find out from Team Cherry when this title is dropping, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun, this Direct, as long as we keep our expectations in check, all right? So go in thinking, all right, Zelda, Pikmin 4, and maybe some ports and remasters from prior Nintendo generations. You know what? I don't think that'd be a bad way to get things kicked off for 2023. But I do want to mention the possibility of, well, that one more thing being Metroid Prime 4. The reason I say that is because they do say mostly first half of 2023. And if I'm saying Prime Remaster will be there, I think it'll be kind of awkward to not at least have some sort of mention of Metroid Prime 4. That could be a good way to close things out, maybe even throwing a release year of 2024 up on the screen. We can always hope, but we'll find out here in a couple of hours. That happening later on this afternoon, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern time. What I'll do is have a video go up on the second channel with my initial reaction, and then we'll have a more formal summary that'll take place on Newswave tomorrow morning. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo's financial report for this previous quarter, that being Q3. This covers the holiday period, October, November, and December. The Switch continues to roll along as expected, although I will admit it does appear the momentum slowing down a bit. Nintendo kind of alluded to this as they were discussing things in their presentation that they sent out for investors. But first, let's talk about some of the numbers here when it comes to the platform. Now sitting at 122.55 million systems. This, of course, since 2017 cumulative. But in that third quarter, they sold 8.23 million systems. That is down technically about 22% from the previous year's quarter, which that's kind of impressive. You sell 8.25 million systems, and actually down more than 20% for the year before. Again, we had this boom for that year where everyone was at home with COVID and all that situation, and it was still kind of tapering off last year, and now we're, I think, getting to more normalized numbers. It was different for Sony because they just couldn't produce enough PS5s before, but now they're able to produce enough systems. In this case, though, Nintendo has also revised their overall expectations for the rest of this fiscal year, that ending end of March 2023. Currently moving it down another 1 million units to 18 million. So they started this current fiscal year last year, saying they were going to sell 21 million, and now they're down to expectations of 18 million. With the hardware in mind, they kind of had to explain why they lowered their expectations, and they did mention that for a while there last year, they were struggling to have enough Switch systems on store shelves, but they did say they've mostly resolved that when it comes to production issues. So getting Switch systems out there is no longer a problem for them when it comes to stock. It does appear that they're alluding to maybe sell-in numbers or just in general, the demand for the system is waning a bit. We'll see, obviously, when The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom launches here in May to see if they have a nice uptick, and then obviously what else they show us at the Direct later on today. Now, moving over to the software, very impressive stuff here because the Switch is about to do something, well, it probably already has by now, since we're already into the current quarter, that no other singular platform from Nintendo has done, which is 1 billion pieces of software sold, currently sitting just under a billion at 994 million. And real quick, you can see Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sitting at 52 million copies sold. Who needs the next Mario Kart? We're just going to port this one to the next platform as well because it sold still over 6 million copies in the holiday time. Isn't that ridiculous? Anyway, as for the other titles that sold well during this previous holiday quarter, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was at the top. 20 million copies sold. That is absolutely ridiculous for games that had, a couple of months, if that, on the market for the entire holiday period. That is impressive stuff from Pokemon. Here's hoping they can get a patch out apparently at the end of February to get things resolved for performance, but we'll see how that turns out. Splatoon 3, though, 10.13 million copies sold. Switch Sports, 8.61 million copies sold. Very impressive, actually, for Switch Sports there. Kirby and the Forgotten Land now sitting at 6.12 million copies. Animal Crossing New Horizons rolling along there at 41.59 million. Mario Party Superstars, that's sitting at 9.38 million. Mario Strikers Battle League at 2.47 million. I'm going to jump down here to some of the more relevant titles, specifically more recent ones, like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That one's sitting at 1.81 million. That is selling faster than Xenoblade Chronicles 2, although Chronicles 2 is currently sitting at 2.5 million copies sold. So Chronicles 3 will have to pick up some steam here when it comes to sales. I think it will with some of the expansions and DLC that's releasing, just a more of an advertising push to get this game over that 2.5 million mark. I think Chronicles 3 will touch the 3 million mark without too much issue. It's just going to, I think, take some time. And then finally, I do want to point out Bayonetta 3 sitting just over the 1 million mark, 1.04 million. I think that's pretty good for Bayonetta. Just in general, the series has never been a big time seller. This one crossing over that 1 million mark in basically 2 months. It's within expectations. I'm sure they wanted it to sell more for how long it was in development, which, I mean, think about when that game got announced to when it did come out. It was 4.5 to 5 years, but I'm sure Nintendo had the correct expectations in mind for this one. But I do want to point something good out here that Nintendo's doing. Rather than laying people off, which is what we've been seeing across the industry, especially recently, Nintendo promises 10% pay hike, even as it trims profit outlook. This from Reuters. That's great. However, I will admit Push Dustin did give some more context here. Where they say more than half of the biggest firms in Japan are planning on rising salaries this year. For example, you see Suntory raising salaries by 6%, and then say Yuna raising by 40%. It makes sense for Nintendo to just in turn raise salaries even by 10%, just to continue keeping their current talent aboard. As Nintendo has said, they're not necessarily looking to acquire studios just outright randomly. They have kind of a Nintendo culture they like to keep together. So makes a lot of sense why you would raise salaries, try to keep people there. Now, I am curious going forward when we get into May and Nintendo talks about their overall forecast for the next fiscal year, what their expectations are with their forecast. Because if it's higher than 18 million, I have a lot of questions for Nintendo as to how they're going to do that, unless we find out about their plan maybe before that and it makes more sense. Still a lot of questions here, and I guess we'll have to wait and see a bit more with the Direct later on today, and then maybe some surprise that Nintendo has up their sleeve for the rest of the year. Next up, let's talk about that all-digital future that we're surely on a crash course with now. We talked about Nintendo's financials. They reported nearly half of all sales were digital on that platform. So even they are kind of seeing a decline in physical sales as a trend. Well, Sony and Microsoft, no secret, they are seeing an accelerated trend of physical game sales going away. But take a look at this. This was posted up by PlayStation Lifestyle saying PSN down in America, Europe, and Australia. This happened yesterday evening. It was about an hour, maybe 2 hours. And what happened is people were unable to play their digital games. And the reason for this is they weren't able to check in with the PlayStation servers to make sure that their licensing was correct and legitimate. And that's kind of the way it works with these digital copies. I think there is kind of a misconception with ownership when you buy a digital game that you can access it at any time. But a lot of these companies need you to check in some sort of time period. And also think about this. All the discourse and talk around Hogwarts Legacy currently, we are in that early access time period for it. And there are a lot of people playing it. And all of a sudden, when they bought it digitally, we're unable to. And that's something I saw getting talked about quite a bit on Twitter as this outage was ongoing, is that they just weren't able to play these games. Now, if you had picked it up physically, you would have still been able to play it, but I'm telling you that all digital future, it will backfire at times like this. Most likely we will have much more uptime than downtime, but you never know what can happen in the future. I think at one point, the PlayStation Network was down for weeks, I think even like a month. This is a long time ago. Things have changed when it comes to infrastructure, but there's always that possibility that you have that Gran Turismo 7 moment where it's down for more than 24 hours. And guess what? You're just unable to play the games that you thought you owned. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a familiar new game product that is coming out. And I saw this, laughed a little bit to myself because, well, take a look. This is Hot Wheels Rift Rally. You might be wondering, why are you showing me this game? Well, it's actually an augmented reality or mixed reality title, and it's done by, I think it's Valen Studios. They worked on Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, the game where you set up those little spots around your house and you drive through them with the car that was connected to your Switch. Well, this is that, but with Hot Wheels. It's coming out for the PS5, PS4, and it's going to work on iOS devices. And if you take a look at it, it has those exact like checkpoints that, again, really remind me of Mario Kart Live. And this makes sense for Hot Wheels because you're driving around a car, has a camera on top. And yeah, I mean, it's the same concept where you're racing around, but it obviously would work with the licensing from Hot Wheels. It does currently have two different versions for sale, the standard edition at $130 and then the collector's edition at $150. And the concept and the licensing with Hot Wheels makes a lot of sense, and it's for platforms that didn't have something like this prior, with the PlayStation 5, the PlayStation 4, and technically even just iOS, I guess your iPhone or iPad. So even if you don't have a game console, you can still buy this and set it up and drive around and have fun with your phone or any of that. So just something that I thought was interesting and I wanted to point out here, especially if you didn't have a Switch, you weren't able to experience Mario Kart Live, you can try it out with Hot Wheels. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, will F-Zero be part of the Nintendo Direct this week? Wow. 85% say no. There's just no confidence in F-Zero, no confidence in Captain Falcon, no confidence in Nintendo. You know what? I think it's time. Nintendo, we need that F-Zero game, even if it's just F-Zero GX. A lot of us have just called for that. Remastered, 1080p, 60 FPS, online multiplayer. I'll take it. I mean, really, with the price of what F-Zero GX is currently on the GameCube, it'd almost be a discount, as weird as that sounds, to get a $50 or $60 version of this on the Switch. But having that online multiplayer, maybe with leaderboards, tournaments, lobbies, there's a lot of really cool stuff they could do with that online play with a title that I think has been heavily underrated for quite a while. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Cross saying, keen for a tech breakdown on Hogwarts, Switch especially, hopefully from Digital Foundry. So as I'm playing this game, it's opening up more and more as I get further and further into it. I do kind of sit there and go, wow, this is going to be a very impressive Switch port, depending on how it looks, how it runs, and we're all assuming it's this exact same game, but on the Switch. This could end up being probably the most impressive Switch port to date. Again, provided it comes out and it's decent enough performance. If this thing comes out and it's 15 frames a second, at like 480p, well, you know what? They tried. It's a big game. But The fact that the file size is massive, the visuals are very impressive, and it's an incredibly ambitious game. This will certainly be one that I as well will be checking out when Digital Foundry does a breakdown on it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was the Nintendo Direct that's coming up in a couple of hours. Leave your predictions down below in the comments, what you would like to see there and all of this. And also, what about the all-digital future with the potential for these different networks and services to go down and leave you without your game that you maybe paid $60 or even $70 for? Thanks, guys, for watching. Also, thanks for all the well wishes with my voice. I feel like it's getting better. I'm able to project more and talk longer, and hopefully by the end of this week, be back to normal and back on track next week for Newswave. But until the new Nintendo Direct later on today, I'll see you guys then.